What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hire and Fire podcast. I am Jeremy Miller, your host. We are joined by Chad Sande again today for podcast number 4, talking about do you really care? Honesty, relationships, what it's like to be an employee, what it's like to be a manager, what's good, what's not good. We talk about a lot. So enjoy today's episode, and we'll come back again next week. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Hire and Fire podcast by Pyra Consulting, episode number 4. Today, we are going to be talking about whether or not you really care. And this is primarily focused on whether or not managers care about their employees and how the hell to do this and whether or not you're doing it well or your boss is doing it well. But this can be construed to the equal sides of employees caring about their job, etc., etc. This is Jeremy Miller, your host, here with Chad Sande, our Pyra Consulting sales guy extraordinaire. Welcome back, Chad.
What's happening?
Hello. So today's topic is basically surrounding a ridiculous policy that my old employer had. My old employer had this thing. So we're in the staffing business, so obviously we place people, they're at our clients, etc. So we make money when these people show up to work. So that's just the way it goes. But we also have to provide a service by taking care of these people. And part of that is like performance feedback, making sure they're doing okay in their contract, making sure that they like the environment, the people, the work, et cetera, et cetera. So my old company had this like overly structured process about how often you had to take out your consultants. Lunch, sure. Coffee, happy hour, whatever. And essentially, we had a meeting about this several years ago, and one of my colleagues points out, wait a second, this is kind of bullshit. So you want me to get performance-related feedback on a 30 or 60-day interval for consultants that are working at our client site. But I've been working here for 19 years, and I sit down with my boss on a one-on-one like every 2 years. Yeah. And I get performance feedback twice a decade, and you want us to get performance feedback 6-7 times a year, right? So, I can get into how I do that here at Pyra Consulting, but it's just a fun debate because some people don't want to meet with their manager. Others really wish they could. And long story short, it's a gap in the industry. And I meet with you guys every single week, and the thing that I enjoy about it most is the relationship component, because that's how I get to know you. And that's how I know your wife's name is Lori, and you have 4 sons, and what sports they play, and what you're motivated by, and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. Because without that time in front of your manager, or without me with the time in front of my employees, I don't really know them. And then it's just a transactional work thing.
Right.
And that's it. So
it's funny you say that because I worked for a company that we had to lunch our consultants monthly. So think about that. What did you say? 20 days, 22 days?
22 working days in a month, yeah.
So,
God forbid you have more than 22 consultants working for you.
But I always thought it was ridiculous for that reason. But then, because I thought, well, naturally you're going to eventually get yourself up to 30, 40 consultants billing, but I had never thought about it until you brought that up. That, gosh, I never met with the managers. My own manager. So
your own manager.
So here we're required to meet with the consultants every month,
and then you get to bug the client and then get feedback.
Yeah,
sure.
Then my one-on-ones with the manager. There was none. Didn't know yearly reviews. No nothing. No one gives a shit. But better have lunch. I mean, we were scored on it. I noticed you haven't had lunch with this person for 2-3 months. That was a problem.
Well, I think the reality is understandable because we're a sales organization. Obviously, we need to make money to be able to keep the doors open and grow and hire more people and all that good stuff. But
did you ever do this? Did you ever have so many meetings that you do, or lunches that you did 2 in a day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been days where I've been to a Caribou 3 times.
Yeah, I would do the deal where I would have lunch at 11, eat a salad, and then then have a normal lunch at 1 with the next guy.
Yeah.
Then we were just talking earlier before we started taping. I'm talking about my weight gain over the year, and now I'm sitting there going, well, no wonder I've gained weight eating two lunches a day.
You're being judged on how often you eat out.
Yeah.
No. So, the Caribou Coffees and the Starbuckses of the world, I have a 1 mocha a day rule, and I'm not like a black coffee drinker. I am is there coffee mixed in with my cream and sugar type coffee drinker, which you are not, obviously.
Nope.
So, but those suckers are 400 calories a piece, even if I'm trying to get rid of whipped cream and skim milk and all that stuff. So, I would bounce around. So the reason why I got into an argument with my old company was, I had been there 11 years, so I had a really good run. I had a lot of people working for me, aka consultants at the client site. And if you have 80 people billing for you at any particular moment, and you're being judged on a 30 or 60 day cycle about how often you take those people out. Again, there's 22 working days in a month. So even if I'm shooting for every 60 days, there's 44 working days that I have to figure out how to take out 80 people.
Right.
So even if I perfectly scheduled it, I'm looking at 2 a day every day. And then in addition, we were a major corporation. God love them. They were huge. They did a great job. So we had a ton of our own internal meetings. Mm-hmm. So I have pressure to be doing my job, recruiting, in addition to taking care of my people, in addition to being an employee inside of the company on my own. There's only so much time in the day.
What do you think, just out of curiosity, what do you think the opinion was of your consultants you were lunching? How important do you think, not do you know, but how important do you think those lunches were on that regular of a scale to the consultant themselves?
My immediate first thought was a consultant that I had working for me at a major corporation here in the Twin Cities. It was with 3M, I'll say it. What does it matter? And they're on the east side of town, and the guy loved Red Lobster. Cool. Those Cheddar Bay biscuits are amazing. So I will crush those, no problem. But after 5 or 6 different lunches over a year's worth of time at Red Lobster, we're not even talking about business anymore.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out chatting. Now, I understand that the relationship component is huge there. And there are people that love that attention.
Yep.
They would love some drinks. They would love a little bit of golf. Maybe it's a coffee. Maybe it's a lunch, whatever. And I think to answer your question, there's an equal number of people that don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And they would rather probably not meet with you, or if they're going to, they're kind of tolerating it.
Yeah.
Even if you're a likable person, they have to stop what they're doing with their coworkers, with their job, in order to go out with their recruiter or whatever the title of the person is. I think it's probably 50-50 who like it and 50 who are kind of whatever.
Yeah. What I found is, I thought when I said I used to work for a company that was once a month, I thought that was way too much. I mean, it was too much on my end, but I thought even on their end, it was kind of what you're talking about. After 12 lunches a year, you do kind of run out of things to say, and not a lot changes on a day-to-day basis. I've found that like a quarterly lunch.
Yeah.
Because when you do have lunch, I feel like they really appreciate it, though. But if it gets to be too much, then it gets boring. So I just did a consultant lunch.
Yeah, it just gets watered down.
Right. I just did a consultant lunch a couple days ago. It was the first one. This consultant's been there about 3 months, coincidentally. And it was great. She was very appreciative.
Yeah.
But I think if I was calling her in 2 weeks to schedule the next one for 2 weeks out, it would get to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think consultants in a lot of ways are analogous to hiring managers where, they're great with meeting with you as long as there's value for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of the what's in it for me type of thing. And sometimes for people, they just love a free lunch. That's cool. No problem. And I think that there are others that they want to know that that their time is being valued.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That gets us to the point of, do you care?
Do you care? So the way I showed it,
yeah,
and how I could do my job at the best level that I could and be able to take care of people was, I didn't say outright I'm not taking you out, but I would make it abundantly clear that the best thing I can do for them is be Johnny on the spot when there were issues.
Yep.
Because most people would rather me fix a paycheck problem in 2 hours than worry about whether or not we got a free burger every month.
Yeah.
So my thing is I will drop what I'm doing for you at any time if you need me, and I will reach out to you at a minimum monthly. Hey, how's it going? What can I do for you? Do you have any issues? And then I tried to make it clear at the beginning of the process that it was up to them to be honest with me. I'm not your boss. You don't report to me. We're partnering on this. So like if you don't like your boss, tell me.
Yep.
If your coworker's being a jackass, tell me.
Yeah, I like to tell them that I'm your advocate.
Yeah.
That the things we talk about here, I'm not running to the hiring manager. This is for us. And so I use the term advocate a lot.
I make the corny joke about Jerry Maguire that in a weird way we're like a sports agent, which is not really true, but kind of true. And it's not a show me the money thing. It's just more of a like part of my role here and part of the benefit of working with a staffing company is you have a third party that can help you with something. Mm-hmm. If you've been there a year and you're looking for an increase, if your boss is riding you too aggressively, if you have a toxic coworker, or name any one of the 1,000 things that can pop up day to day in anyone's job, we are a resource that we are independent. We can hear you out. We can fight for you if that's what the situation calls for. Sometimes I'm a friggin' psychologist when it comes to dealing and helping manage consultants because they're just struggling. They feel like they're underpaid. They feel like they were passed over for an opportunity. Mm-hmm. They're not sure if this is the right long-term job. And who the hell goes into their boss's office on a regular basis and tells them the 100% truth about their unhappiness in their career?
Right.
Besides weirdos like me who say everything.
Now, I was thinking about this when you were talking. So I'm going to ask the question, and it's kind of a loaded question, and now I'm taking the chance you might say the right answer, but I just want to see if we share the same experience.
Okay.
So when you're obviously you're a 1%er recruiter.
Okay, quick kiss of my ass.
Okay. In your career, when you've talked to consultants, I'm sure you've asked them a question similar to what's the thing that annoys you the most about recruiters? What don't you like? What don't you like about different staffing firms you've worked with? What's one of the more common responses you've gotten?
Almost always it's about the hiring process itself. This dumbass send me this job, and there are 38 keywords on here, none of which match anything having to do with what I do. Mm-hmm. Or I got a call from a guy in New Jersey with a really heavy accent, and I can't even understand him, and it happens to me all the time. Those are normally the majority of it. But you will get the occasional, like, I worked with ABC company, they placed me out here, and I never heard from them again.
Yeah.
That happens for sure.
That's been my number one, is that, and it might not be I got placed, although that's part of it too. It might be I got called, I returned the call, never heard back.
I met with this recruiter,
never heard back. They submitted me, I never heard back. I got an interview, I never heard back. And then to me, the most egregious one would be that one of, they walked me in the door on the first day and I never heard from them again. And to me, that's almost the worst one, because that's when they're thinking, you know what, you're paying me $50 and you're probably billing me at $80 or $100 or whatever. That's when they start to look at the greedy aspect of a salesman/recruiter.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of consultants, job seekers don't know is there are internal dynamics that can happen.
Yeah.
It is a sales environment, so recruiters will turn over. Mm-hmm. It's a sales environment, so sales will turn over. Yeah. But an organization should have some basic processes to cover that. So how I handle it is, if a recruiter leaves with active consultants, I'm trying to transition those relationships to another recruiter.
Yep.
What the candidate may not know, and everybody in our industry does, is that we are paid on commission for the people that we have placed. So, like it or not, there's a money motivated component there. So, the best thing I can do is pay partial commission to the new recruiter point of contact. And that way, hopefully, they will do the right thing by just taking care of this person. But they also have a little bit of a financial carrot to take care of them during the contract. And then if you can build a solid relationship, if that person does not go perm or whatever the situation is, you can maybe place them again. And then in that situation, you'd have 100% commission. But the fail safe there should be, even if recruiter guy quits, you as sales guy, the likelihood of recruiter guy and sales guy quitting in the length of your contract, I would like to think is pretty low.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah.
So if sales guy leaves, then the company, the staffing company, us, will end up putting a new sales guy on that account. If the recruiter leaves, then there should either be a replacement recruiter responsible for managing that relationship, or the salesperson with that account, pick any company, should be able to at least be aware of this situation and maybe pick up a little bit of slack.
Yeah.
If none of those two things are happening, then either A, the staffing company just doesn't give a shit and they don't really track this stuff at all. And then now you have a trifecta. You have an organization, a recruiter, and a salesperson. All three of these entities have to not care at all to never reach out to you again in order for you to experience that.
Yeah.
And that should be your sign of this is not the right company for me. You would like to think.
What I've found is even the consultants that generally don't care if you reach out to them much. You know, we're talking about your working consultants now. I think still appreciate like a monthly touch.
For sure.
Even if it's just an email, just checking in, want to see how it's going. Anything I can do to help.
Right. What I would do is I would do 2 emails in a row.
Yeah.
So 1 month email, 2nd month email, and if you haven't replied, then I'll start calling you.
Yeah.
And I'm not assuming that you're ignoring me. I'm probably assuming that you're just doing fine and there's nothing worthy of mentioning. But now I kind of have to get you on the phone at least to be able to make sure.
Yeah.
Then when I have you on the phone, whether it's right away communication or a few months later, if you have challenges with the client, I will volunteer to meet you for lunch, coffee, whatever, to chat through it, and then give the people the option if they want to meet or if they don't want to meet. But I'm not going to guilt you to go have a cheeseburger with me.
Yeah. Well, in your last company, when you had to do it every 2 months, did you tell your working consultants, look, I got to lunch you every 2 months? You didn't do that? Yeah.
No, maybe some people did. But
Yeah.
what do you think? Should you?
Well, the company I was at where we had to do it once a month, we had to speak with them every week. There had to be a touch every week. And if once a month you're doing lunch, that would be a touch.
Yeah.
So the other 3 weeks, this is the goofy part about the kind of activity that drives, is because you got 1 week where the touch was, and it's got to be a phone call, not email. The phone call was, let's set lunch. And then the other week was, you're having lunch. And then the other 2 weeks. And so but the activity it drove, it would go like this. You'd place a consultant, and I'd say, look, I have to speak with you unless you're on vacation once a week. Me or the salesperson. So when I call you, just pick up the phone.
Please answer.
Just answer.
I'm begging you.
So then I can log it as a conversation.
But this is so ridiculous because all right, if you were to say to them, well, okay, let's say you go 100% full disclosure like you did, and you say, the only thing you can say is, you know those dumbass processes that your company makes you do that you don't believe in either? I have this that I have to do.
Right.
And now it's just silly.
Right.
So I'm just more of the opinion that I would, I don't regulate that. I'm having weekly meetings with every single one of my internal employees here. And over those discussions, I will become more and more familiar with the people that are working for them at our clients. And then my job as the acting recruiting manager in that circumstance is to just be aware.
Yeah.
Did you or did you not follow up with this person? So as of right now, we have an individual starting on Monday. We've already delayed the start date per his request. Reasonable request. Everything seems to be cool.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, okay. So, but like, my radar went off today because I was like, when was the last time we spoke with this guy to make sure he's good to go for Monday? And the answer was Friday of last week, which isn't that big of a deal. But when we're talking about start dates, we got to be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah.
When we're talking month 7 of a 1-year contract, like whether or not I talk to you that week is really inconsequential to me.
It's interesting though, the activity that drives on the sales side of the house. There are times I'll ask a hiring manager about phone calls, and they'll say, "Look, my phone blows up all day long." I mean, it's one of the most consistent things I hear from a hiring manager. My phone blows up all day long. I don't answer it unless I know who it is. And
they're basically saying, because of guys like you jackass salesperson, I get lit up constantly. Well, but I like you a little bit more than some of the other salespeople, so here we are on the phone talking about it.
But what I'll do though is I'll use that as a moment to educate them of what goes on behind the scenes. Kind of like on the recruiting side. I would just tell them, look, our deal is high touch, and that's not just fluff. You know that. It's one of our core values. I'm just giving you the pitch from a few years ago at a different company.
Sure.
And that's not just fluff. So it's very important to me and our company that you and I are in touch weekly. But because of that, I'm scored. I'm graded. I'm metriced on having a conversation with you once a week and a lunch with you once a month. And you and I both know there's not a whole lot to talk about week to week to week. But please answer the phone when I call.
Yeah.
And on the sales side, when I've had this conversation with managers and they're like, oh, God, my phone blows up, and I just don't answer it anymore unless it's someone I know and I know why they're calling. And then I'll use that as a learning moment for them to explain, well, let me tell you what goes on the other side of the fence, sort of the behind the scenes of staffing.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of hiring managers actually appreciate that. And I've had many that are very surprised to hear that. A lot of salespeople are required, their company might require them to make so many phone calls a day or to have so many conversations with hiring managers a day, existing managers, new managers. And so what it drives is this activity, this effort that is really just to check a box. And that's why your phone's blowing up.
Yeah, but that's half the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go back to the question of what you asked earlier about like what do, candidates, consultants, whatever terminology you want to use, gripe about, they know this is a thing. They know that recruiters are reaching out trying to set meetings in order to check boxes. Then when you add it on top of the fact that they've had experiences where they've met with recruiters and then they ghosted them, now they're doubly up to the knowledge of the BS that's going on. Because it's like, all right, so I met with you and I gave you my time and I thought we could help each other. You never call me back. And then in addition, I know some of you people out there are being metriced and judged on how many meetings you have. So do I want to meet you? No. And that's where the notion of just send me the effing job description comes from.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible idea. Any candidate, consultant, job seeker out there listening, we should never be doing that because we don't know what you want. At a minimum, we have to connect with you on some level to understand what you want, what you do, what's motivating you, what your strengths are, what your goals are. Then we're in a position to avoid wasting your time with jobs. But I understand how the savvy veteran IT consultant in our industry, pick any other industry, doesn't matter, same thing. I understand where they're jaded, where it's like, dude, screw you, man. I got you recruiters calling me all the time. Like, unless you can prove to me that you have a job worthy of my attention, I'm not even going there. But then that puts us in a spot where unless we can convince you just to talk for a second, we either don't send you anything and now we've ghosted you, or we send you a job and we run the risk of being 80% likely of being wrong. And then now you go, see, there's another dumbass recruiter sending me worthless jobs. And I'm like, well, but you kind of asked me to. Like You said, what jobs do you have? Well, you didn't give me anything, so I don't even know what to send you. Yeah. And if I do send you anything, I'm probably sending you something that isn't interesting. Right. Bad commute, bad pay rate, wrong company, wrong technology, who cares?
So how do you think, under the topic, do you care, how do you think a good recruiter shows a candidate that he cares, or she? Your thoughts as an expert recruiter.
Well, this is a two-pronged thing. If you're a quote good recruiter, meaning you've been doing this for a while, you've proven to be successful, and you're making a living doing this. So essentially, for the most part, anybody north of 12 to 18 to 24 months of experience, at least, you have to be able to balance all the things in your job. You can only use the phone so often. Sometimes email is better. So I think as long as somebody is reaching out to you in some fashion. So let me give you a stupid example. And a lot of people would disagree with me about this. If I found out that after you interviewed at our client that you did not get the job, I'm probably going to email you that information. And it's not as though I'm not willing to call you. I'm more than willing to call you. Mm-hmm. I just have to make decisions every single day about whether or not I can do a 20-minute phone call versus a 30-second email. So I could be wrong in a certain circumstance and email you that, and you would have appreciated a phone call. Or I could be right and email you that, and you're perfectly fine because all you wanted to do was get an answer. Mm-hmm. Either way, at a minimum, a good recruiter, again, quote unquote, a good recruiter is just at a minimum consistent, concise, and with communication. So it doesn't have to be face-to-face, doesn't have to be over the phone, doesn't have to be email. But you just have to be able to update people on what's going on and find the balance between being a partner to them to help them through the process or being the guy who has to educate them. Like, sure. Whether it's you're going to have to make a decision quicker than this. Hey, I know you're working right now, but let's be honest. How am I going to be able to schedule an interview for you outside of 8 to 5? You want? How am I going to figure out a way to get you in front of the manager at 6:45 in the morning? Like, we got to be able to meet in the middle somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So there are occasions where we just have to push back on people. Yeah. But for the most part, the managers and consultants, the job seeker side, the hiring manager side, they just want consistency. Mm-hmm. So if you send an email to a recruiter, yeah, you should expect a response. Do you care personally if they call or reply? Well, maybe, but you should get some type of reply. Even if it's I don't frickin' know. Hey, we submitted my resume to XYZ company and I never heard back. Yep, totally agree. Unfortunately, this is the way they operate on occasion. I apologize. I'll ask for feedback, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. Just frickin' be honest and communicate. That's my answer. What's yours?
Communication. I think that would be my answer in one word as well. Consistency in that communication. Steady follow-up. Maybe from the hiring manager's perspective, respectful persistence.
Okay, define that.
Well,
there's an art to that, so it's not just science.
Well, I think you got to stay consistent and persistent with your follow-up, or even if you're prospecting, right? Do it in a respectful way, but in a way that the manager understands you're not going away, and respects that as part of the process.
Do you ever get to the point where you're reaching out to a candidate and you're struggling, or a hiring manager and you're struggling, and you just say, I got to connect with you somehow. So just, kind of let me know. If you're not interested, you're not interested. If it's bad timing, it's bad timing.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that where I've left voicemails at something to the extent similar to this, where I will say, look, I got to hear back from you. Whatever. I'm just, It's under the category of just doing my job kind of thing. That's not how I articulate it, which is a whole different topic in terms of what we say and how we say it, and do you write out your scripts and that kind of thing. But yes, at a certain point, it's basically, look, I'm going to keep bugging you until you call me back or email me or text me, because that's my job.
Well, what's funny about this is now that I'm in a position where people want to sell things to me, I experience a very consistent, similar approach. I get hit up on LinkedIn, and I'll basically accept any invite. I don't really care. They will presume my acceptance means I'm interested, which I understand how they would feel that way.
I do that.
And then I will get a fairly lengthy LinkedIn message, which does nothing for me. The longer that thing is, the more likely I am to ignore it.
But see, I would say, if I can interrupt,
Sure.
even though that may not be the ideal pattern or method of operation, I still go back to, if that person in that example that you're talking about is consistent with that day after day after day after week after month after year, they'll sell. They'll close business.
Yes, but that's exactly where I was going, and the point is they're not. So I'll get a LinkedIn invite, maybe with a note, maybe with not. I'll accept it. I'll get 1, maybe 2 follow-up LinkedIns. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't even make it challenging. You know what my email address is. We've connected on LinkedIn. So you didn't even bother to email me directly.
Not to put you on the spot, but give me an example of something you get hit up.
Oh yeah. So nowadays in the recruiting business, there's some companies out there trying to sell AI shit, like chatbots and artificial intelligence regarding how recruiters recruit. So they're trying to automate a human process, right?
Okay.
Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I don't know. 20 years from now, we'll know whether or not AI in staffing works. But right now, I'm not super interested in that. But they'll hit me up, send me a LinkedIn invite. I'll accept it. They'll send me a message on LinkedIn. I won't reply, but they'll see that I read it, because I read everything, because I got that weird thing from my iPhone where I don't want the little number on the app. I got the same thing in LinkedIn. I want it cleared. So they'll see that I read it, and then I won't reply, and then they'll send me another one, probably similar jargon. They'll never call. They'll never email me directly. Ever.
And then is that
almost ever.
And then is that where it usually
That's
ends?
where it ends.
And so
if they were, to your point, if they were to call and email me, they'll get me to reply. Now, the reply is not going to be what they want to hear. It's going to be a no. Right. But as a salesperson, you would rather hear no than hear nothing.
Right.
It's like trying to, like literally, if you're out there trying to date right now, and you're reaching out to a girl or a guy and you're getting ghosted, nothing is more frustrating than getting ghosted. You'd rather somebody give you the finger overtly and say go away, right, than just utter silence. Yeah. So, but if you go away, then I'm never going to tell you anything. Right. But if you consistently call me all the time, I'll reply.
Yeah. And I guess that's my point, is that in that example, if that person just stayed in touch with you monthly, you and 1,000 other people, I don't know, whatever the number is.
Yeah, who cares, right?
Hi, do you need AI? Hi, do you need AI? Hi, do you need AI? Eventually, they're going to, even with that crappy sales process, they're still going to do sales. And I think on the recruiting side, I think this happens a lot, especially with youthful recruiters, is they're just pounding, right? Boom, boom, boom. Whereas when they come across good people, if they just stayed consistent about their occasional contact with those people, eventually you're going to find yourself with a great network of X, fill in the blank of the skill set. And the same holds true on the sales side. And then from there you can hone your skill. So, and then on the sales side, the same would hold true. If you stay consistent with the message and staying in touch, and eventually you're going to get business, and then eventually you can work on your trade to hone your pitch, so to speak. So it's not taking 5,000 prospecting calls and emails to get one job order.
All right, so let's transition into the other side of the debate, where it's not a staffing thing, it's just a employer-employee relationship. Yep. Same thing applies. So the people that I'm managing here, I have a process personally, internally, where I meet with you guys every single Friday. And I've explained to you how you can earn your way out of that. I still need your report every Friday, but once you're over certain Mendoza lines, then we don't have to meet every week. We'll meet every other week, right? So I'm just trying to make it easy on my own schedule based on your performance and make it easy on you guys, even though we have to sit down and meet. If I wasn't consistent with that, you guys would know that I don't really give a shit.
Right.
But I think one of my strengths in this regard is that this happens. Now, I'm cool with adjusting. You were out a couple of Fridays ago. We would have met, whatever. We didn't meet that week. Cool. I still need your report.
Yep.
You didn't send it on Friday. That annoys me a little bit because I have these own little processes for myself about accumulating the data. So I'll bug you on Monday, and I'm not going to be a jerk about it. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to be like, I need your effing report. What's the deal? Maybe it's the Friday before a holiday weekend. So maybe people are dipping out early. So maybe I'll be flexible on that. But like consistently, I'm sitting down to meet with people. And it's because I have a job to do. I have a company to run. I have a department to run, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's a relationship building component. So you guys will come in here and sometimes you and I will talk about personal shit for an hour straight. And then other time we have a super detailed business discussion about something that you're loving or something that I need you to do more of or whatever.
But it usually does include both.
Yeah.
Even if it's skewed one way or the other. And if what I would say is that alone is how you as a manager, not just an owner, but a manager would show your employees that you care.
So, but I'm only dealing with a half a dozen people right now. So there are managers out there that are managing friggin' 40 people at a time. My advice would be just do the same thing, but adjust it.
Yeah.
So instead of it doing weekly, maybe you do it monthly. So you have 40 people. So every single week, you have 8 to 10 people that are in your office.
Yeah.
And then you need to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Is that 30-minute time slots, 4 of them on Thursday and 4 of them on Friday? What are you going to do? Are you going to have a certain group of people? Maybe you're only meeting with the people that are struggling. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there.
I actually think in the staffing business, the opposite is the big problem. I think a lot of managers not only are they not meeting their subordinates weekly or monthly, they're not meeting them at all. There might be conversations casually going on in the pit or in the offices or whatever. I don't know if I can say that even like a yearly review type meeting is common.
Is it happening consistently?
No.
Yeah.
And so what you end up with is a large group of employees who don't feel like their managers give two shits about them.
Well, and that's do you really care? Because it's not just business. Right? So you're running a department, but do you really care about the people that are there? And even if they're kicking ass and they're like your top dude or your top gal, whether they're producing something or they're building something or who cares? You won't know whether or not they're happy in their career, what they want to do next in their career, unless you give them a good enough FaceTime to be able to get there. And I'm trying to build a relationship to the degree that I get it. I'm the boss. Like, I don't get the water cooler talk nonsense that I used to.
Right.
Because I was just one of the team members before. But if I'm doing these consistently enough and we have a good relationship and I'm vulnerable with you and I'm telling you stories about like what I'm struggling with the team, what I'm struggling with about you as an individual, where I want to go, whatever the topic is. Or maybe I'm literally sharing a personal story. Like, I'm more likely to learn about you and your life and like how things are going for you and how this job fits into your life if I'm hearing stories about your personal life. But most people aren't willing to tell those stories until they have a level of trust built up. So my plan and method is to initiate it. I'll tell embarrassing, compromising, personal stories about myself, and we might only talk about me for the first 3-4 meetings. But eventually, almost everybody will break down. In the sense that, like, if they had a wall up where they didn't want to talk to their boss about something that was bothering them, either in their personal life or in their business life, eventually they'll realize, well, my freaking boss tells me stories about all kinds of stuff and is vulnerable as shit.
Would you say right now, and it's a small sample size, there's only 6 of us here, would you say you know something personal about every employee? Meaning not like, I got some gossip. I mean like, you've had conversations with.
Yes, but some people are a closed book.
Yeah.
One of our peeps here, I will intentionally about every other week bring up how's things going at home, and I don't get much.
Yeah.
And that just isn't something that it feels super comfortable and smooth. And in this circumstance, whether the employee just doesn't want to share or they compartmentalize things, I don't know. But I'm at least going to ask and try and figure it out. This main process was started for me here because of that story that I told earlier. But in addition, I've watched really, really, really good people leave companies that I'm a part of. And the main reason why is nobody ever asked them what the hell they want to do with their career. And if they're kicking ass in their job presently, you're more likely to be left alone by your boss. And normally that's a good thing. But if they don't hold themselves accountable to connect with their people, eventually they're not going to know that you used to be here for the money, but now you're not. Or you want to get into management. Or yes, I'm really good at my job, but I got this going on at home and it's really affecting me. You'll never learn that shit unless you're actually trying to invest into your team.
I think it's interesting. You use the term vulnerability. I think
I think I said it smoother than that.
Must be the tacos.
The old tongue twister.
Yeah. But, I have this saying that I've heard and that I use, that friends will work out in 5 minutes what enemies will never work out. And you can't become, in general, but we're talking in office dynamics now, manager, employee, you can't become friends without opening up a little bit and being a little vulnerable. And so I think that's I don't know if that's a strategy. I don't think it's a strategy for you.
It's
to
just
be honest
me.
with you. It's just you. Yeah,
it's just me.
But that will both.
But I utilize my personality as a strategy. So, okay, hypothetically speaking, you're a manager out there and you're listening to this and you're a pretty chill, introverted person. You may not feel comfortable going down that road.
Right.
But as long as you're consistently meeting with your peeps, eventually you'll develop that and you'll pick up some insights. Because if you just give people, it's the old Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. The way you win friends and influence people in a weird psychological way is to get them to talk about themselves, and they will like you because you're listening to them talking about themselves. So, but if you don't invest enough face time, it's never going to happen. It's the same basic thing with relationships with kids and spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends. I mean, there's just a certain amount of face time that you kind of have to have. Even with a person who's a closed book.
Yeah, if I was consulting you as a manager, and you as the manager were telling me as a outside consultant, I'm a management consultant, and you were sharing me frustration about this employee or that employee, I think one of my first questions would be, well, what do you know about that person? Well, their calls are down and they're not getting enough JOs, and you get into all the actual activity. I'd have to stop you, and I said, no. What do you know about the person? Is he married? Does he have kids? What does he like to do in his spare time? I think that's where that whole do you care piece really starts. Before even we get into, caring about how much money they want to make, and therefore here's how many phone calls it's going to take and job orders and interviews and all that, the business stuff, I think it starts with the personal piece and making that connection. What do you think?
But the thing that I was thinking when you were talking was,
I'll tell you this, not to interject, but I will.
sure, not that I've ever done that before.
I would have never even started here had it not been for the personal connection. I wouldn't have. I would have never even accepted the job.
Sure.
I'm only speaking for me, but it was without that. I mean, that to me, that's where it all started. There had to be some kind of a connection on some level personally, other than just, oh my God, the commission plan is great. I think I'll come on board and get in on the beginning and that.
But you're also seasoned in your career, and you've had enough failures and successes and bad managers and good managers, and you don't even have to get into how you view me as a manager, but the basic idea is you have an opinion on that. Mm-hmm. Like, remember when you were younger and you were in your early to mid 20s and you were just trying to make a name for yourself, that the guy who's interviewing you or whatever, they could be a complete jackass, and the only thing you're thinking is I just need a flipping job,
right?
Like, just get me a job.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you go, oh, wait a second, I get to choose where I work, and I get to pick the environment, and that's where the old you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you comes from. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it's just personal style. So the managers and directors and VPs and blah 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 that this company will eventually have will highly likely not be as weirdly transparent as I am.
Yeah.
But my hope is that core value that we have translates down, because I at the top am preaching that and living that over and over again. But everybody has their own style, and I'm totally cool with that.
So in today's world, in the world of Me Too and everything else, do you worry about being too honest and real and sharing too much about
Interesting point, because I'm the guy that's super willing to talk about religion or politics, and there's people who won't go there. Mm-hmm. So yes, I could be prone to put my foot in my mouth, and it's probably only a matter of time. I've had colleagues that feel very strongly about this, where in their office, they won't even close the door if it's just them and another female employee. Because it's not that they're going to do something wrong, it's that something could be misconstrued, mm-hmm. and then all of a sudden HR is involved. Yeah. I have had those thoughts as a lead in my old career when I was taking my, you could call them employees, but I was loosely managing them out for drinks or coffee or whatever. And here you are driving in your car, heading from the office to lunch, and it's just you and her. Or you and him, depending upon the sex situation. Mm-hmm. And you got to be careful, at least a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Do I lose sleep on that at night? No.
Well, it's your authentic self, and hopefully in the long run, that takes care of itself. I don't know. Cream rises to the top. It's not something. It's not something I would hope you have to worry about, even as we get bigger.
Well, and I think as a manager, you have to be able to understand the circumstance. If we end up out as a team having drinks, for example, which we don't do all that often, but whenever we do, I have to understand that there is a certain moment of the night that as the superior, I need to bow out. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm not careful, I can put all of us in a compromised situation. Yeah. We got some true serum liquid. Got some liquid true serum booze in us.
Yeah.
You're more likely to say something that you're really feeling than you would when you're dead sober.
Yeah.
I'm more likely to say something in the same regard. So I have to be careful what I say to you, and then I have to be careful what position I'm putting you in about what you might be prone to say to me.
That's so funny, because now as you're saying it, I'm thinking about all these happy hour events I had in my past with previous companies. And I'm thinking, God, come to think of it, yeah, by the end of some of those drunken debauchery nights, the managers, the leads,
they're gone.
They're gone. They weren't there.
They're gone.
So that was a smart move on their part.
Yeah, one of my old company's little things that they did, and I don't even know if this was said or unsaid, but the true executive level managers especially on like sales incentive trips. You know, everyone's in the pool getting bombed. And these are the guys, for the most part, walking around drinking water.
Yeah. And
they kind of know that there's a line in the sand that says, I can only embrace this in a certain situation. And stupid business-wise, it's easy to control, too. Like, if I'm the one cutting the check for the tab, then I can be the one who says, all right, I'm closing it. You guys are on your own. If you want to keep partying, I don't care. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't really lose sleep over that. But, you know, as a manager or in a managerial situation, you have to be at least aware of a compromised position you could put yourself in.
Yeah. And maybe a good manager realizes where that line is, or at least sees it coming, and recognizes when it's time to bow out, leave, you know, whatever, cut out of the conversation, you know, whatever.
Or if you're an employee right now and you really want to get into management, whether you feel like that's where the money is or that's where your next move is, these are things that you need to be able to think about, because it's you can't really understand. When I started this company and I'm listening to podcasts and I hear about business owners, and I heard it regularly, that running your own company is a very lonely place to be. And I didn't exactly understand that, but now I get it.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of have to be a little bit more removed.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Friends?
Sure.
There's an episode where Chandler becomes the manager. And he goes from being the chummy dude in the break room with everybody to, like, no one will talk to him.
Right.
So one day he's their buddy and next day he's their boss, and then it's like,
over. So, like, if you want to be a manager, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure that you're sure? Because you now have to be the guy who's above everybody else, and you don't get the water cooler talk, you don't get the friendship component. Yeah. People are a little bit more afraid to come in and tell you things.
So let me ask you, are you, again, we're small, but do you ever wonder, like, I wonder what they talk about in the pit when I'm not, versus when I'm in the pit with them talking? Does that something that's either crosses your mind now or maybe in the beginning used to when you first started the company?
Not exactly. One of my buddies showed up here the other day kind of randomly, and we were talking about this, and he was talking about running his own company and the difference, and he's like, you know, when you're an employee and we all know how many plays were taken off. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you're the biggest ass kicker in the department that they've ever seen. If you're on ESPN or whatever website you're on and the boss walks out, your immediate gut reaction is to close that shit.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a high likelihood that when I walk out there that people are stopping doing what they wanted to be doing.
Yeah. That's funny.
And pretending like they're working.
That actually just makes me, it might have been this week, you came walking into the pit and I was typing a letter that I needed to get out. It was a personal email.
It was a personal
email. It was I was on my personal computer over here.
Which you're the weirdo as your personal, which you're the, maybe we can debate this next, where do you or do you not bring in your personal laptop and set it directly next to your work laptop?
And I'm sitting there typing because I got to get it out. It was hockey related.
Sure.
And I had to get it out by a certain time so the parents knew whatever. And I'm typing and I can see out of the corner of my eye coming and I'm typing.
And you're like, oh shit.
And I'm like, and the thought actually occurred to me, do I put do I stop and slide over to my work computer? And I think what I just said like something like, I responded to you and said something like, I'm working on something personal right now.
Sorry, I just got to fire out this email. But okay. But let's really be honest. Mm-hmm. If there are occasions where your boss should give you shit for that.
Sure.
I've had an employee sit with his phone out in the pit and watching television shows while he's working. He was literally working, but he had the phone propped up on frickin' YouTube or Netflix or whatever, and I'm like, okay, there's a difference between you're listening to a podcast or a radio show and working compared to, like, I have frickin' Friends on Netflix or whatever the hell. But I don't care who you are, you're doing that shit. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at personal emails all the time. I'm getting emails about my kid's school, or I'm getting emails about this, and sometimes I dive into it and sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And I get personal calls at work as well, and you guys get personal calls. I mean,
Yeah.
But some people just handle it poorly. One of our ex-recruiters who didn't make it long consistently was doing phone interviews in the pit for another job.
Wow.
Like, I mean, so I'd have my employees come up to me, did you know that so-and-so was just on a phone interview? And I'm like, come the F on. Really? Like, hide. Even I'm telling you to hide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, go into the parking lot. Go into your car. At a minimum, go into the conference room.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. But
That's taken Do You Really Care to a different level.
I mean, come on, right? I don't know. But I also hire a certain demographic. Mm-hmm. You guys have, some of you guys are younger and some of you guys are older, so it's not really an age thing. I'm hiring people that are experienced in the industry, and I'm making some basic assumptions that you're doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I have enough data and metrics in place where you don't feel micromanaged, hopefully, mm-hmm. and that I get the data that I need so that when the moment's right, I can call you out.
Yeah.
So, and it's not about just jumping on that any chance I have. One of my employees came in today and was venting about a situation that didn't go his way. And that was my moment. I wasn't going to pull him aside. What he was doing was not bad enough or wrong enough for me to do that. But it's like, you came in here, you wanted to be able to talk with me about this, and now I'm going to give you what you really need to hear. Which is, let's be honest, if you were doing more of what you needed to be doing, this frickin' situation wouldn't be so dire. Mm-hmm. So now I can utilize the fact that him and I have a good personal relationship to be able to say, now I can pounce. Yeah. Because my only other option is to do the old call his extension and say, hey, can we talk for a second?
Right.
And now you have this weird-ass walk from your desk to my office about what the hell am I going to hear?
Well, I think that dynamic exists between us, and that's, you can't, we've had conversations where I think you were talking about how we might spend 3/4 of our one-on-one talking personal stuff. And then we get into the business part, and the business part ain't so pretty. That's a conversation that I actually would say has been fairly easy to have. That doesn't make it an enjoyable conversation if your activity or your results aren't where they need to be. But having the relationship we have allows that transition to occur. So it's not just hey, can you come to the office?
But I think the main reason why, and I'm not going to take credit for it because I think you and I equally have met in the middle, I'm very transparent with you about what I'm trying to accomplish here, mm-hmm. how much I have invested, what's going on in my life that surrounds that, what we need to be able to do. You've been equally transparent about your goals inside of the company, whether it be what you make or what you could become. So then, when I say your activity is low, I can say to you, not only is your activity low and I can objectively prove it with data, this doesn't even match with the shit you're telling me. Mm-hmm. Because of our relationship, I know this is what you want to accomplish, and you're not even doing what you need to do to be able to accomplish this goal, let alone that goal.
Right. And
the only reason I can say that is because A, I know it, and B, we have the relationship where we can actually have that friggin' discussion. Mm-hmm. And I would like to think that I'm just as transparent. I give my employees enough information where it could be compromised. I'm telling people exactly what I'm trying to do financially, exactly when I want to hire people, exactly how I feel about the way they're performing. If they wanted to, they could utilize that information and work it against me. But I'm hopeful that the relationship, because I'm the direct supervisor at the moment, is different there. How in the hell I handle this 5 years from now when I'm coming into different offices and I'm the boss of the boss of the boss of the boss?
See,
I'm not really sure.
I was just going to ask you that. What is your thoughts on how not duplicatable but sustainable that is through growth?
I personally feel that as long as I'm running these weekly meetings with my direct reports, that I'll know that information. Mm-hmm. So let's make up a story. I have multiple offices throughout the country, and I'm managing a gal named Christy in Salt Lake City. And Christy, in turn, manages 2 other managers who, in turn, manage 5 people apiece. As long as I'm having my individual meetings with Christy, I'm going to be able to understand how she ticks, why she's doing what she does, and how she's managing the people below them. If she's holding true to the meetings that she needs to be having on a weekly basis with her managers, then she's going to be able to answer questions that I have about those managers and those managers' direct reports. And then if those managers of hers are meeting with their people every single week, then we should all know this shit. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we should be able to have a conversation that says the data says this guy's not doing shit. But you know something I don't know that's around the numbers. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why you know it is because you're involved and you get it. And the more that I feel that you're full of crap and you're making up stories and things are not congruent, then eventually I'm going to have to call bullshit. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be in a position where I have to be questioning my leader's ability to lead and or whether or not they're the right person for the job because of their lack of knowledge. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Do you think let's just call it your I care mentality to management right now, which works in an office this small? Taking that same scenario, you managing a group of directors who are managing some managers who are managing some salespeople and recruiters. Do you think that I care, vulnerable, authentic self management style can sustain itself and be transferred
through the hierarchy?
Through the hierarchy, yeah.
I don't know, because if I come in as owner executive guy and I go out to happy hour with sales guy, do I really know what I'm getting from that person? Is that person putting on a show because of who I am? Mm-hmm. Is that person really have massive weaknesses, but they're trying to hide it in that circumstance? This is a weird question for me. One of my old regional vice presidents that was only in the job for a while was a military guy. And he had the opinion of, I'm coming into your office as the regional VP and I'm evaluating you. And we all know that's fucking happening, mm-hmm. right? Yep. You know I'm doing it. I know I'm doing it. Everybody knows I'm doing it. So he would come in and he would be evaluating the manager and he would be evaluating the team, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of his visit, we're in this like all company sit down thing. And people are asking him his opinion on how are we performing. And his answer was, I won't tell you. And everybody was a little surprised. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I believe in the hierarchy. I'm going to give my feedback to your boss, to your manager. You know, in this circumstance, our branch manager. Yeah. And it's his freaking job mm-hmm. to be able to disseminate that to you guys based on what he knows and what he thinks is right to be told. Yeah. So if you guys are kicking ass and I give him sweet feedback, then if he wants to deliver that as kudos to us, great. Mm-hmm. If you guys are struggling and I rip him and he wants to actually spin that positive and not go super negative, then I'll leave that up to him. Mm-hmm. And I was really intrigued by that because it's the opposite of my transparent nature, but he just 100% respected the hierarchy and put it on the branch manager to know what to do with us.
Sure.
And then ultimately, obviously, if that branch manager can't accomplish what he needs to, in that circumstance, he'd be removed. Yeah. What do you think of that? Do you think that style is too anti-my transparency?
Not necessarily, but I was thinking to my own personal experience and several of my peers in the past where the company that we were working for had grown. And now you had all these layers, this hierarchy. But they had done such a good job with the whole relationship piece that even when what would happen was they had done such a good job with it, a senior exec would come into town. Let's call it a RVP, like your case, or even the owner. You'd find yourself being open with the owner, with the RVP. Because we felt like we had that relationship.
Yeah.
And then the person would leave. And a couple days later, some really bad thing or negative thing would come back about your conversation with the RVP.
Yes.
And
I heard you said blankety blank to Joe when he came into town. You're like, what?
And it was taken wrong.
Yeah.
And the reason it was, and then you'd find yourself going, you'd be thinking, well, I thought we were buddies. We were just kind of talking,
yes.
right? Because now there's so many layers there that it changed the dynamic of the relationship.
But in that component, as long as we're going back to this weekly meeting nonsense, which I refer to it as nonsense, but like I think it's very valuable. If you, Chad, go out with RVP guy for lunch, and you put your foot in your mouth and you didn't even know it, and RVP guy goes to your manager 3 days later and says, so Chad said this weird friggin' thing at lunch the other day. If your manager knows you, based on what we're talking about here, knows what you're trying to do, what you're accomplishing, what your strengths and weaknesses are, where you're going in the company, what's going on in your personal life, blah, 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 then that manager is in a position to say, all right, well, I hear you. Maybe he just said some stupid nonsense. Or, based on what I know about the guy, like he's super passionate about blank, and maybe you just read it wrong.
Yeah.
So that manager is in a position to defend you when you're not there. If that manager doesn't know you were shit, and you guys don't have that relationship, and his boss, who comes into town once every 3 friggin' years, is giving him shit about one of his employees, guess what he's going to do? He's going to make himself look good.
Right.
And if anything, he may or may not bury you with that comment, but he's sure as shit not going to feel like he has the clout to be able to stand up to it. So it's a combination of all of it. What relationship do you have with your direct manager to know about you and how to defend you? What relationship does your direct manager have with the RVP in this circumstance to be able to either A, push back, or B, accept it and take it with a grain of salt and figure out how to message that to you? If there's a full-blown breakdown, then A, you would have never have said that in front of him anyways, because you would have been super intimidated by executive person coming into town. It's all about the relationship.
Yeah.
And the bigger the company gets, the more likely it is that the executive level management just fundamentally has forgotten what it's like to do the job of the line level employee. And that's where shit gets spicy.
Yeah. So maybe you're right. So maybe I think to answer my own question, I think it can be the relationship piece, the vulnerability piece, the do you care piece can be transferred through a hierarchy.
Yeah, but you never know. What if RVP girl gets replaced with person that has no relationship with the manager? Well, now new RVP's coming into town. There's no relationship context between her and the manager. And now everything's being misconstrued.
Yeah.
So I would argue in that situation of, that's a hypothetical situation, but I would argue as the boss of the RVP, I don't want you doing office visits until you've established rapport with the individual leaders. Because if you freaking show up next week, fresh promoted RVP, your subordinate manager is going to be putting on a show for you, and so is everybody else. And everyone's going to be super, super hyped up and on alert because new boss is coming into town, and who knows what the hell is going to happen here.
Good point.
But the quintessential opinion of these circumstances is new RVP is supposed to pop in immediately. And my mindset would be I'd let it simmer a little bit. Like, develop some rapport with the manager, help them understand how you work, because you might just tick completely differently than the way the previous RVP did. So they might be super accustomed to a data-heavy manager, and like the only thing their old boss cared about was like what they were closing, what they were accomplishing, project timelines, whatever the hell the data is.
Yeah.
and then now you're the new RVP and you're all about like emotions and how everyone feels, well, then, yeah, your subordinate manager is not going to know that immediately. How could they possibly?
Right.
So if I was the owner in that circumstance, I would be telling my RVP, you're new to this region, but you're not allowed to go on the road for 3 months. So I need you to run everything from here and get a lay of the land and figure out what's going on to the best of your ability and develop the relationships before you go popping into town and freaking flipping over desks and losing your damn mind or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I literally just made that up based on your question, but that makes the most sense to me. So how do you know that you really care? You prove it. I think the only way you prove it is by time invested, period. Any relationship, you have to prove it. Whether it's proving to your candidates or your consultants that you care, maybe that's an email, maybe that's a lunch. Proving to your managers, proving to your boss, proving to everybody. And then over time, you'll win people over. Or at least you'll develop some type of relationship to know what to do.
If it's consistent.
If it's freaking consistent.
Excellent.
Hell yeah. Episode number 4, I think. Yep. Podcast number 4 is in the books. Appreciate you listening. We'll come back again next week with another podcast. No idea what the topic will be. And we'll talk to you then. Have a good day. You just got done listening to Hire and Fire, a production by Pyra Consulting. Please check us out online on either LinkedIn, Facebook, or our website at pyraconsulting.com. That's PIRA consulting.com.